DreAllDay.com.
So this is a series of stretches that I'm doing here after a workout. I'm actually training to run the Miami Marathon this January. So since I've been running so much, I'm going to do some stretching with my legs. Now that green thing you see me holding in my hand is called a stretching strap. I got that on Amazon. There's a link in the video description below to my tools page. All the tools and stuff that I use, you will see links to all of that stuff on that page. Now what I'm doing here, first I stretch the hamstring. So I pull that leg up, get that strap that has loops in it. See how that strap has those loops? So you can put your feet or your hands inside the loops, and that'll help hold it in place. It's not like using a towel or something like that. So it holds your foot in place. And then I'm stretching both hips. So the ideal when you're stretching the hips, the way that I'm doing here is to keep the shoulders down on the ground. You see how my right shoulder is an inch or two off the ground. That's just because I need to work on my flexibility. So you get that, keep both of those shoulders down while you're stretching those hips out. Now I actually, truth be told, I actually did this entire stretching series without the camera. I wasn't filming myself. And then I said, you know, I need to record this and get it on YouTube. So this is me actually doing it again. And I actually only did this for YouTube. That's why I'm not even holding the stretches that long. And now I'm coming back. I did the hips. You saw me pulling that hip inside, then pulling the knee up to my chest. That stretches the glute muscle, and then pulling on that hamstring again, that right hamstring. And when you're stretching the hamstring, see I'm stretching that left hamstring. You saw how my right leg, you want to keep your right heel on the ground and the back of your right knee on the ground while you're stretching the left leg, because you want to work on the flexibility of the joint. So if I had to bend that leg or bring it up, the right leg off the ground and stretch the left, then that means I need more work flexible wise. So if you're in that situation, you need to do the same thing. So here I'm stretching the left leg. You see me opening up, so you open up the hips there. Now you're pulling that leg over to the left side. Keep that right shoulder down. See how my shoulders stand down. And then you can see me put my hands in the loops of that stretching strap, which makes it different again than just any regular band that you can use. That you got to try to make sure you keep the grip. There's me checking on y'all, making sure y'all watching. So there, turn that hip over. And now I'm going to pull on the inside so I can stretch the outside of that hip, the outside of that glute muscle, pulling in towards my body there. So kind of like you would be Indian style, but only with one foot. Now stretching that left glute, pulling the knee up to the chest. And this is something that if you ever do any warm-ups, you've done this before. You pull the knee up to the chest to stretch out that glute muscle in a dynamic warm-up, but this is a static stretching. So now again, pulling it back to the hamstring. Ideally, I want to pull that hamstring so much that I can touch my foot to the ground above my head, but I'm a long way from that. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but there are people who can do that because they're that flexible. Again, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but hey, it's good to dream, right? So now, working the groin, I grab in between. I have both feet inside loops of the stretching strap. Now to stretch that groin muscle, I just pull inside to pull my feet towards my chin, ideally again. And there are people who can do that. I'm not one of those people, but if I keep stretching, or you keep stretching every day, you can eventually get to that point. So this is to stretch the groin muscle. And again, I'm going quicker because I had already did this and I was doing it again. I did this just for the camera. I did this for YouTube. I did this for y'all. So this stretching, again, if you do this on a consistent basis, this can help get your body a whole lot more flexible. For any of you who have lower back issues, a lot of young people come to me telling me they have lower back issues. You need to start stretching more regularly. So here I'm going to do a stretch of the hip flexors and the quad muscles. So now this is all lower body stretching that I'm doing here. So I'm putting my foot into that strap loop there at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is pull up. Now I'm going to turn sideways here so y'all can see. I have my foot inside that loop, as you can see, and this is, you need to be able to balance. You could do this laying on the ground, but I don't like to lay face down the ground that way. So I like to do it standing up. I prefer to do it standing up. So I'm going to stretch that hip flexor. The hip flexor is the muscle right at the front of the pelvis. So if you're sitting down right now and you lift your leg off the ground, there's a muscle that tightens up. It's right between your abs and your leg. That muscle that you feel tightening up, that's called your hip flexor muscle. That is the muscle that moves every time you walk, every time you sprint, every time you run. It moves a lot. So when you have hip flexor injuries, it's very hard to run or sprint at full pace, to have full power in it. So you want to make sure you stretch those hip flexors, because tight hip flexors happen a lot to athletes who are in running sports like basketball, or any type of explosive forward movement like basketball, or someone who just does running in general. You run a lot, period. And playing basketball, there's a lot of running involved. So you got to make sure you stretch this hip flexor. If you have a problem with your hip flexor, what it does is work the entire kinetic chain. Kinetic chain, for those who don't know, is I stretch the left hip here, hip flexor here, is that every muscle in the body works together and they work as a team, which means if you have a weak muscle or a muscle that is not firing properly in your body, that muscle, the place where you feel the pain, you might feel some pain somewhere or feel like something's not working the right way, is not always the place where you're feeling the pain. So for example, if your lower back is hurting you, that doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with your lower back. It might mean that you have foot problems. It might mean there's some pain in your foot. It might mean there's a weak calf muscle. It might mean your hamstrings are tight. It might mean your back muscles are tight, your upper back muscles are tight. It might mean a hip flexor thing. So it's not always the muscle you're feeling that the actual issue is in, and that's something that a lot of athletes are unaware of. I was even unaware of for a long time. So make sure you're working every area of the body as much as you can, and make sure you do the stretches. When I say working, I'm talking about the stretching part. Of course, you got to work on your game and do all of that, but you know that. I'm talking about the actual stretching part. You need to make sure you're putting time into stretching out your body as much as possible. I don't think there's a such thing, as far as I know, as overstretching. If there is, I guess somebody can come in the comments and tell me. I'm sure somebody will. But you need to make sure you're taking time out to stretch your body every single day, because flexibility is very, very, very important. I heard Clyde Frazier, Clyde Frazier, who's a Hall of Fame NBA point guard, played for the New York Knicks. And if you live in New York, you know Clyde Frazier because he does the games on TV. He said, he actually started doing yoga, and I'm going to put a full video out of me doing a yoga workout also. It's not going to take that long, but you'll see that video in the future. When he started doing yoga and made sure that he got really serious about his stretching on a daily basis, it prolonged his career. He said he stayed in the NBA longer because of the fact that he started stretching more often. So make sure you go grab the strap if you need it. If you don't have it, go grab it. It's much better than using a towel or a band or something like that, because you can't really control it as much. And get your stretching game on. Work on your stretching game. If you have tight muscles, you pull a muscle or tear a muscle because it's tight, or because of some other muscle that's not firing or is not loose enough, then thusly the kinetic chain, the team working together, one of those muscles starts working too hard because it has to make up for the muscle that can't work properly because it's tight in the first place. That's going to be your fault. So make sure that doesn't happen to you. Again, of course, we know injuries can happen even if you don't want it to, but make sure you do as much as you possibly can to prevent injuries. Stretching, having limber muscles, limber joints that can flexibly move and work together without too much stress and strain because of tightness, that is part of working on your game. So make sure you take that seriously and do it as much as you can starting today. Work on your game. DreAllDay.com.